Look around you. The device you're watching this on. The AI that might recommend your next video. The weather forecast that told you to bring a jacket. We live in a world built on logic. A world of code, simulation, and strategy. But what if I told you that much of this world, the good, the bad, and the truly terrifying, was conceived in the mind of one man? A man you've probably never heard of. He wasn't a celebrity scientist like Einstein, or a tragic figure like Oppenheimer. And yet, he may have had a bigger impact on your life than both of them combined. His name was John von Neumann, and he was the architect of our modern age. But here's the paradox that makes his story so vital and so chilling. He was also the architect of our potential annihilation. This is the story of the man who built the future, and then argued with perfect, terrifying logic that we should blow it all up. To understand John von Neumann, you have to understand his mind. And his mind was, by all accounts, a biological miracle. Born in Budapest in 1903, he wasn't just smart. He was operating on a different plane of existence. By age 6, he could divide two 8-digit numbers in his head and joke with his father in ancient Greek. By 8, he'd mastered calculus. He would read a page of the phone book and recite the names, numbers, and addresses back from memory. His brain wasn't just a calculator, it was a photocopier. As a young man, he fled the rising tide of Nazism in Europe and, like so many other brilliant minds, found a home in the United States. He landed at Princeton's Institute for Advanced Study, the same place Albert Einstein worked. But while Einstein was the quiet, thoughtful sage, von Neumann was the complete opposite. He was a showman. He threw lavish parties that were famous throughout Princeton. He drove fast, often recklessly, sometimes reading a book while behind the wheel. He loved fine suits, bad jokes, and the company of powerful people. He was a whirlwind of energy, a man whose mind moved so fast, the rest of the world seemed to be standing still. And it was this mind that the US government needed, because they were building a weapon to end all wars. When John von Neumann arrived at the secret desert laboratory of the Manhattan Project, the world's greatest physicists were stuck. They knew how to make a bomb using uranium, a relatively simple design. But their other bomb, the one using the more powerful element plutonium, was a nightmare. You couldn't just slam two pieces of it together. It was too unstable. It had to be crushed, squeezed from all sides at once, with unimaginable force and perfect symmetry. Imagine trying to crush an orange into a perfect sphere the size of a marble, using nothing but explosions. The problem was pure mathematics, and it was considered impossible. Until von Neumann looked at it. He solved it. He developed the calculations for what became known as the implosion lens, a complex sphere of precisely shaped explosives that would focus their blast inward, crushing the plutonium core and triggering a nuclear chain reaction. Without John von Neumann's calculations, the Fat Man bomb, the one dropped on Nagasaki, would not have existed. But his involvement wasn't just theoretical. He was a core member of the Target Selection Committee, and his logic was cold, hard, and brutal. He argued for bombing the city of Kyoto. His reasoning? It was a culturally vital, untouched city, and its destruction would inflict the maximum possible psychological damage on the Japanese leadership, forcing a surrender. He was overruled by the Secretary of War, who had honeymooned in Kyoto and couldn't bear to see it destroyed. But this incident gives us a stark window into von Neumann's mind, a place where emotion and sentiment were variables to be discarded in the pursuit of a logical outcome. The war ended. The atomic age had begun. And for most of the scientists at Los Alamos, there was a sense of horror and regret. But not for von Neumann. For him, the bomb wasn't an end. It was just the beginning. Having designed the ultimate weapon of destruction, von Neumann then turned his mind to creation. And in doing so, he laid the blueprint for the world you and I live in today. You see, in the 1940s, computers were basically just giant, complex calculators. They could perform one task, and to get them to do a different one, you had to physically get out a wrench and a soldering iron and rewire the entire machine. It was slow, clumsy, and incredibly limited. Von Neumann had a revolutionary idea. An idea so profound, it's now baked into every single digital device on the planet. He conceived of a stored programmed computer. The idea was simple, yet it changed everything. What if the computer's memory could hold not just the data it was working on, but also the instructions for what to do with that data? Suddenly, the machine wasn't just hardware anymore. It was hardware running software. To change the task, you didn't need to rewire the machine. You just needed to change the code. This is the von Neumann architecture. It is the fundamental design of your laptop, your smartphone, your smartwatch, your car's GPS. Every single one. He invented the very soul of the modern machine. And he was just getting started. He used his new machines to create the world's first computerized weather forecasts, pioneering the field of climate modeling. He co-invented game theory, the mathematical study of strategy and decision-making. It became the intellectual bedrock for economics, evolutionary biology, and most importantly, the entire strategic doctrine of the Cold War. And in his spare time, he dreamed up the idea of a universal constructor, a machine that could build copies of itself, a self-replicating automaton. It was the theoretical basis for everything from computer viruses to 3D printing to the entire field of artificial intelligence. He was thinking about the technological singularity. In 1948, he was a man living 50 years in the future, but his mind was still fixated on the most pressing problem of his present, the Soviet Union. The man who had built the computer was now using it to design an even bigger bomb, the hydrogen bomb, a weapon 1,000 times more powerful than the one that destroyed Hiroshima. And as he ran the numbers, as he applied his ice-cold logic and his game theory to the new geopolitical reality, he came to a conclusion that is, even today, almost too terrifying to contemplate. He believed that a nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union was not only possible, but inevitable. A mathematical certainty. And if war was inevitable, he reasoned, then the only logical course of action was to win. And the only way to win was to strike first. John von Neumann became the most powerful and influential advocate for a massive, unprovoked, preemptive nuclear attack on the Soviet Union. He wanted to launch hundreds of nuclear bombs at every major Soviet city, wiping the country off the map before it had a chance to build its own arsenal. He chaired the von Neumann Committee, which advised the highest levels of the U.S. government on nuclear targeting. He was the intellectual father of mutually assured destruction, or mad the idea that the only way to prevent nuclear war is to have so many weapons that both sides are annihilated. But for him, mad was a temporary state. The real solution was simple. He once famously said to a colleague, "If you say why not bomb them tomorrow, I say why not today. If you say today at 5 o'clock, I say why not 1 o'clock? Think about that." The most rational man on earth, the architect of the logic machines that define our world, had arrived at the most monstrously irrational conclusion in human history. He saw the death of hundreds of millions of people not as a tragedy, but as the winning move in a global chess game. In 1955, John von Neumann was diagnosed with bone cancer. The disease ravaged his body, but not his mind. He continued to advise the U.S. government from his hospital bed at Walter Reed, a man of immense power, terrified of his own mortality. His colleagues said that as the end neared, his brilliant mind, the mind that could memorize phone books and design new worlds, began to fail him. He couldn't remember things. He would cry out in terror in the middle of the night. The man who had faced the prospect of global annihilation with cold logic couldn't face his own. He died in 1957 at the age of 53. His legacy is the world we inherited. We live inside his computer architecture. We play by the rules of his game theory. We are haunted by the promise and the peril of his artificial intelligence. And we still live in the shadow of the weapons he helped perfect. His story forces us to ask an uncomfortable question. Is genius a neutral force? Can a single line be the source of both our greatest salvation and our ultimate damnation? John von Neumann built our world, and his story is a permanent, chilling reminder that the same intelligence that can unlock the secrets of the universe can also provide a perfect, logical, and inescapable rationale for its complete and utter destruction. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as fascinating and unsettling as I did, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more deep dives into the minds that shaped our world. See you next time.